Hello, on this video we're going to take a look at the basic workflow of All-in-One VFX Toolkit. The most important part of the workflow is the asset component. To add this component we'll need some sort of renderer, so any mesh with a mesh renderer will work. Also a sprite renderer or like a particle system, a trail, a line renderer, all of these will work, but for now we'll do some tests on a quad. So now that we have a mesh render, we can go to add component, and then here in All-in-One VFX Toolkit, we can select add All-in-One VFX, or we can search it here. So add All-in-One VFX. This will add the asset component with all these options, and also it will change the material for the All-in-One VFX material. It will only change it if you're using some other shader that isn't part of the asset. If you are using a shader that is part of the asset, it will not change it and it will just add this component here. Here below we have the material inspector with the configuration presets, the shape properties, and all the effects here. All these effects can be stacked one on top of the other, but we won't take a look at this now. We'll take a look in a future video. For now, we'll focus on this component, but to test it, we'll need to add some properties here. So we can add this texture and we can change the color to red, add the distortion effect, for example, and we can change to additive to make the black be transparent. So now that we have this effect enabled, we can press deactivate all effects and the distortion effect will get deactivated. But if we activate it again, if we change any of these properties, we'll see that once we enable it again, the changes we made are maintained. And if we press new clean material, everything gets removed and we need to create everything from scratch again. So we can add another texture. And now create material with the same properties is useful because if we, for example, duplicate this material here, we'll see that if we change the color, these two materials are linked because they are the exact same material. So changing one changes the other. But if we create another one with the same properties, now this is a new material and we can change it without affecting the other. In a similar way, save material to folder is really useful because we can have a new quad here, and if we want to use this material here and we don't want to copy everything, right, we can just reuse the material. So if we press save material to folder, a new material will get created. If you get an error message, it means that you need to go here to window, All-in-One VFX Toolkit window. We can dock this here because it will be used in many cases. And here we can see material save path, and when you open this, you will create this save path that by default is the material saves folder inside the asset. And we also have more things that we'll see in future videos. So yeah, you open this and you'll create this save path, and when you press this button, it will work every time from now on. And now that we've created this material from this renderer, we can just go here, and in the mesh render we can drag it in or search it, and now these two materials, these two renders are using the same material, and if we add any of these effects, it will work on both of them at the same time. Another important aspect of the save material to folder feature is that if we want to save a prefab, for example this one here that we still haven't saved to folder, and we create a prefab, we'll see that this gets an error. We have a rendering error where the material isn't showing up properly. The reason this happens is because by default the asset saves the materials here in the scene unless we specify it with the save material to folder, because I don't want the users to have 1 million materials, unused materials down here. So the materials will only get saved if you press this button. So now we can press this button here, and then now that we have this material, we can come here, apply the changes, and now everything will work perfectly fine, and we can start adding more prefabs here, and everything works perfectly fine. So let's continue with the buttons. We have apply materials to children. So if we add another, I don't know, Yeah, let's do another quad here and then press the button. And the same material gets applied, and we can press render material to image, and this will create an image, a PNG with the material rendered into it. Finally, we can remove component. This will remove the component but won't change the material. So we'll add the component again, and the material doesn't change because it's an all-in-one-VFX material. And then we can press remove component and material, and this creates a sprite default. I chose this shader because it will work in all render pipelines, and it was the safest bet. This is the very basics of the asset. Knowing this, you can start playing around with the material inspector and all the effects, and using more shapes and combining them and changing the presets and using meshes, particle effects, blah, blah, and creating awesome stuff. And also I'd like to remind you that here in the demo, there's a lot of effects that you can take a look. Everything, of course, is created with the asset, and you can inspect all the materials and all the meshes and particle systems to see how everything is done. And of course, if you want to learn everything else there is to know about the asset, please keep watching this playlist or take a look at the documentation.